Greetings, my name is Carreras and I'm here today to talk to you about my Master's in Engineering Management final project, Reducing Meeting Costs in Eastern Federal Lands Highway Division's project delivery process. Before I dive into the details of the project, let me talk to you about my professional background. I graduated in 2008 with a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from the University of Puerto Rico Maya West campus. Ever since, I've been working for Eastern Federal Lands in the project delivery process in different capacities. I'm currently a project manager and I'm pursuing a Master's in Engineering Management degree from the Polytechnic University of Puerto Rico. One of the requirements of the program is to do a final project that involves all the things you learn from the degree. The reason I chose this topic was because I'm very familiar with the project delivery process and I like to take the opportunity to improve processes whenever I can. So this presentation will be as follows. I'm going to start with a background information about Eastern Federal Lands and the problem I'm addressing with the project. Then I'll talk to you about the project, starting with its objective and ending with the results and conclusion. I also will present you the references for the items shown in the presentation. So Eastern Federal Lands is part of the Federal Highway Administration, which is one of the agencies under the U.S. Department of Transportation. Different from the Federal Aid Program, Eastern Federal Lands works as a small Department of Transportation would. We run through the project delivery process like any DOT would do, and we do planning, design, and construction contract management for roadways and bridges inside federal lands typically, and for state partners when they request our assistance. Because of this, since we're using our partners' money, it's critical that we run as efficiently as possible to provide the most value. So the problem we're addressing is the problem of ineffective meetings or time wasted doing meetings. If you have been in a management role or working in an organization, you notice that a lot of the time is spent on meetings. If you're a middle manager, you spend about 35% of your time in meetings, and upper management can spend about 50% time of them. Not only the amount of time in meetings is important, but also recognizing that a lot of time is wasted in inefficiency in meetings. Actually, $37 billion in the U.S. economy are wasted every year in unproductive meetings. In a process that has a lot of meetings, like the project delivery process done, any inefficiency that you can find to improve the project could result in substantial cost savings. So my objective was to identify strategies that could be implemented in Eastern Federal Lands Highway Division's project delivery process that will result in savings. The goal is to reach at least $20,000 in yearly savings through the implementation of the strategies. Like I said, the scope of the project is related to inside Eastern Federal Lands, and it's focused on the project delivery process. You would see in red the different offices that are involved in the project delivery process. Obviously, you have everything that's inside project delivery, like project management, redesign, project development, technical services, and construction. But you also have some departments on the business operations side. These are acquisitions, programs, and environmental compliance, all that are crucial for the project delivery process. In addition, the project delivery process is divided in two different phases. You have preliminary engineering and construction engineering. Preliminary engineering starts when the partner contacts us and requests our assistance, and goes all the way to you award a construction contract. Construction engineering goes from the award of the construction contract all the way to the project closeout. For this project, we focus on the meetings related to the preliminary engineering phase. So how did we carry out the project? The first thing I did was to do some document research. I investigated meetings. What was the best practices? What are possible issues? And what are strategies to address those issues? I also gathered data inside Eastern Federal Lands about the meetings we were having, their frequency, their typical duration, and their typical attendance. Also, I surveyed the functional and project management in the process to be able to determine what they thought it was going right, what could be improved, and any other recommendations they could provide to improving meetings in the process. All this information was analyzed and recommendations were developed. Also, project savings were calculated based on the estimated savings in time from each of the recommendations. So through the analysis of the data, I found that the project delivery process has 8 standard meetings. You start with your pre-scoping meeting, which is a meeting where a discussion about the project is held and the team decides who has to go to the scoping meeting. The scoping meeting is a meeting that you go to the site with the partner to discuss the project and their expectations, and that way we can find all the information we need for the design. Then we go to the kickoff meeting where that information is discussed and the functional managers provide the project managers with the activities and resources they need to complete the project, which are the basis for the schedule and project budget. You can have project-specific meetings for addressing specific issues. You would have at 30 and 95% comment resolution meetings where everyone reviews the design documents and provide comments, and the comments are discussed during the meeting. You have planning and meetings at 70%, in which the team goes to the site with the partner to discuss the design at 70%. During the procurement process, you can have pre-bid meetings in complex projects where you give the opportunity for contractors to ask questions about the project they're proposing and bidding. And you have project advancement meeting, which is a monthly meeting in which all the managers get together to discuss project issues. On this side of the screen, you will see a table, and that table has information about the frequency of the meeting, how many of them we have every year, their typical duration, and their typical attendees. The duration, you'll notice that some of them are saying that our last 24 hours. That's because it accounts for the travel to go to the sites and from the site and having the meeting. Also, the attendance is divided in GS levels, which is how federal employees in my agency are ranked. So GS 14 is higher than a GS 12. You will see decimals in the attachment. That's to account for the reduced rate in attendance to some of the meetings. As part of this, the project, I did a survey to the project managers and the functional managers, and I found a lot of useful information that I used to develop the recommendation. Information such as some people thought the pre-scoping meeting wasn't really necessary. All the information was strategies to reduce the time spent in the project advancement meetings and the comment resolution meetings. In terms of the planning hand meetings, some people said the project manager wasn't needed in them. They were also part of the survey. They asked about behaviors in meetings that could lead to inefficiencies. And from there I learned that a lot of people thought that people were arriving late to meetings, that meetings were sometimes ending late, and that people were leaving before the meeting ended. All of this was taken into consideration for the development of the strategies. One more additional thing that the survey taught me was I asked people to tell me what meetings they were attending that they were not providing much value and that they thought they were not essential to. Before I talk about the different recommendations I have for the project, let me tell you how I calculated the cost savings. So the projected annual savings I calculate by totaling the average hourly rate for the employees by the number of employees at that grade for each grade. So you took all those, add them together, and then you will have an hourly rate for the meeting. Then you will multiply the hourly rate with the typical savings in time that the recommendation will produce for that meeting, and then you will multiply that for the number of meetings in a year. One thing to note is that the average hourly rate that was used was the burden rate, which means that it includes benefit, taxes, and any other charges that the hourly rate is charged to the project. So there were 3 main recommendations as part of the project. 2 of them have multiple parts to them. The first recommendation was making 50-minute meetings a standard. This recommendation basically is that for every meeting that is an hour or longer, we would cut 10 minutes. The meeting would start at the top of the hour and would end 10 minutes before the end of the hour or the end of the half hour. that would create a 10 minutes of transition in between meetings without reducing much value. This is meant to address the fact that people were getting late to meetings and leaving early from meetings to be able to catch up to other meetings. If we assume that for 80% of the pre-scoping, kickoff, and common resolution meetings there would be a successful strategy, then it will result in about $30,000 a year in savings. The second strategy was to remove non-essential personnel from meetings. And I'm highlighting 3 particular departments which, after analyzing the data, I thought there were really good recommendations that they didn't attend. In both programs not having to attend common resolution meetings that they don't have any funding issues. Construction not having to attend the pre-scoping meeting because they always have to attend the scoping meeting, and the person attending the pre-scoping meeting is not the person that goes to the scoping meeting. And they're not attending a kickoff meeting because their resources fluid in the design are kind of set depending on the review they're going to do for the project. So they don't really need to be attending the kickoff meeting either. Another recommendation was that the project manager did not have to attend all the planning hand meetings, only in certain situations and level of complexity. That strategies, removing those people from the majority of those meetings, just reducing the rate of attendance, would result in about $25,000 in savings. The last set of recommendations are specific to particular meetings, and eventually delved into changing the way the meetings were run. That applied to the project advancement meeting, the common resolution meetings, and the kickoff meetings. Allowing the project manager to decide whether a pre-scoping meeting was needed. And this one assumed that maybe 50% of the pre-scoping meetings were not really needed. And that would be for very simple projects that wouldn't be needed. And the last recommendation was that the scoping meeting, to have teams that have to attend the meeting, collect information for others that don't play a big role in that meeting. And if you add for all these recommendations together, you would get almost to $200,000 in that third recommendation alone, totaling for all 3 recommendations about $260,000 in savings a year. So, like I said before, the implementation of all these strategies will result in savings of over $260,000 a year. This means that our objective of savings $20,000 a year was exceeded. There were some limitations on the project, however. And one is due to the survey being done by perception of the managers instead of like the actual objective data that could be determined. So a follow-up study for this project would be to actually measure data on actually people getting late to meetings or meetings getting delayed past their time and being delayed because people were not prepared. So that kind of information could be collected and done a more robust study on this subject. And one last item of recommendation is that before implementing these strategies, other factors other than cost savings should be considered, and the possibility of the misuse of these strategies be considered when deciding whether a strategy should be implemented or not. In the screen you would see the different reference I had for the images in this presentation. I used the Federal Highway website, the Office of Federal Lands website, and the Muse as references. I hope you enjoyed this presentation and have a nice day.